This is going to be, honestly.
All right. So are we going? It said, I think we're going. Is it showing a picture of me over here?
It sure is.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks a lot for you guys coming. I think there's going to be more folks at the actual meeting later. The reason we're here today is that at 1 o'clock, the Oneida County Zoning Committee is going to vote to shut down the Minocqua Brewing Company tap room in Minocqua. This is the the fourth year in a row they've tried to put me out of business. This is the second year in a row they've actually voted to shut me down. It's a foregone conclusion that they're going to do that today. The main reason they're doing that is because they hate my politics and they want to make an example out of me, that anybody who speaks out in a progressive way it will be punished. So what I'm going to do today, and while we're out here today, is that I expect as soon as I try to give context to why they're going to try to shut me down, they're probably going to tell me that I have to stop talking, and if I continue to talk, they're probably going to remove me from the meeting. So the reason we're here today is to be able to get all that context out, because it's going to be easy for these guys to say, Kirk and the Minocqua Brewing Company have violated the conditions of their conditional use permit, and because of that, we have to shut them down. Well, the nuance is that I have been forced to violate some of the conditions of my conditional use permit, but all of those violations have now been fixed within 2 weeks, and instead of shutting me down, they could have simply and easily called me up and worked together with me to fix these problems. What's going on now is a nuclear option that should never happen to a small business who is simply working to try to get open for a summer tourism season. So let's quickly go over what they're doing, what the issue is today, and then we'll go into the context for the last 4 years of what's been going on. So last fall, after the Oneida County had shut me down officially, we made a compromise. We sued them in federal court, and in exchange for us dropping our lawsuit against Oneida County, they gave me a conditional use permit for a beer garden. Now, this is why I've got visual aids today. So this is the conditional use permit for the beer garden. It shows a beer garden right there. It shows my main building. It shows this disputed pork chop, which I'll talk about later, but it's something that the town, it could be ours, it could be the town's, it could be the Department of Administration's or of Transportation, but this has been a disputed point for 4 years. Part of this plan involved for me to get a easement from Highway 51 into this parking lot from the town. Now, the town, we talked to the town in late December last year, and the town said, we will give you the easement as long as you drop your federal lawsuit against us, which towns can't do. That's illegal. Towns have to give easements, not if they like you or not. They have to treat everybody equally. They told us that they would only give us this easement if we dropped the lawsuit against them. Let me read you the exact quote of the email from the town's lawyer dated January 17th. Fred, that's great, meaning that we'd get the easement. The town believes that if this agreement is entered into, Mr. Bangstad will then have the same plus the county-issued conditional use permit, and the lawsuit should be dismissed. I would propose a simple stipulation in order reflecting that the parties' agreement to this entered into this license agreement and for the dismissal of the suit. I'm around tomorrow, Thursday, if you want to discuss. Thanks. That is a lawyer telling my lawyer that they will give me the easement as long as I drop their lawsuit against him, and that is extortion. That is illegal. So we responded to them at that time that we're going to add that quote to our lawsuit against you, and if you want to avoid further pain and suffering in a federal lawsuit, then you should give us the easement because that's the right thing to do. And while we said that to them, we filed in federal court an emergency restraining order with a federal judge that said we know that the town is holding this easement over our heads, and that we expect that we won't be able to get all of the things done with our conditional use permit that are required of us because the town is holding us hostage. We went to a federal judge. The federal judge denied that restraining order, saying it hasn't happened yet. You're not in immediate danger, and a restraining order is all about just protecting somebody from an immediate problem. So we are now in immediate danger, and we anticipated this happening last March. So fast forward to, I had to build a beer garden. I had to build a tap room in Madison last summer, specifically because they put me out of business again last summer. And I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in defense, in building another building, specifically because I knew this was going to happen again this summer. So I ran out of money. In the spring, I ran out of money. I didn't have that easement. I decided to drop my federal lawsuit and be extorted by the town of Minocqua. I decided to drop my federal lawsuit in exchange for the easement because I didn't want to fight anymore. I didn't want to have this exact thing happen again. I just simply wanted to serve beer to my customers in a beer garden. So I dropped it. Now, because that easement, we got the easement, but the other things had to happen is part of the conditional use permit that could only start happening after that easement was dropped. We had a Department of Transportation had to give us a permit to build an on-ramp into the area. We had to put up signs. All that stuff has, by the way, happened as of a week ago, and we're 100% compliant with the conditional use permit. But because I opened up on Memorial Day weekend without having all of those things fully completed, hey Tony, because I opened up on a Memorial Day weekend not having all those things fully completed, they immediately took the lead from the town who had just gotten off the hook. The county immediately substituted for them and filed. Yes, we actually have done everything we're supposed to do, and you guys just needed to wait for 2 weeks for us to catch up. Now, that's the near-term issue that we're dealing with today. But I wanted to get into the overarching issue that they're not going to let me talk about in the meeting today, that tells a story that should be a movie, in my opinion, at this point, because it's been 4 years in the making of both selective enforcement and making up zoning stipulations willy-nilly, moving the goalposts that I could never meet so that they could selectively enforce those moving goalposts and only punish me as opposed to other businesses in Minocqua or in Oneida County. So let's start with this bad boy right here. Oh, well, first of all, it started with, I put a Biden sign up in my old building in right before the election. And I did it because I shut down my building and I laid everybody off because I wasn't willing to serve food inside my restaurant when COVID was still running rampant throughout the country. I shut down, I laid off all my employees, and I hung a huge Biden sign. I said, if I'm going to go bankrupt, I'm not going to go bankrupt without a fight. I'm going to fight for the president I think that cares about science and cares about human life and cares about COVID. I put that sign up. Within 2 days, the Oneida County sent me a letter and said, your sign is too big, and we will fine you up to $250 a day until you take that sign down. That was illegal. There was a court case in 2015, Supreme Court of the United States, called Reed versus the town of Gilbert, that forbade municipalities by limiting the size of political signs because that is a First Amendment violation. They were completely wrong in telling me my sign was too big. That was the first issue of selective enforcement, because we all know that there was a ton of big Trump signs all throughout the state of Wisconsin. They probably violated some county ordinances too, but guess who didn't get those letters saying they were going to shut them down because of that. So that's selective enforcement. That was the first instance that I got from the county. Now, the second one was when I sold that building, I bought this new gas station. Lo and behold, there's this piece of property right in front of the Texaco gas station that the old owner, John Camacho, he owned the Best Bike Building. Well, look what he did for 20 years. He put out bikes right in front of this area to showcase what he was selling or what he was renting. He acted like this little plot of land was his for 20 years. He mowed the grass. He plowed the snow. When we went to apply for our administrative review permit with the county, we had to go through the town first because that's the process. The town has to kind of give their nod before the county. Even though the Minocqua does not have a zoning committee, they don't have any zoning officers, they are an unincorporated town, they have absolutely no say in anything about zoning. However, because for 100 years, Oneida County has just like said, town, give us your go-ahead, that's what's been happening. There's no law. So anyways, we went to the town, we was like, we don't know who actually owns this property. Our deed did not give this to us. We'd like to be able to resolve this because we don't want to have this hanging over our head down the road. So the town said, well, we don't know who owns it either. You're the developer. You spend the money to figure out who owns it. You're the developer. So we spent thousands of dollars with my architect going to finding out Camacho, that the guy, talking to him, we talked to the Department of Transportation, and we talked to the town. Turns out, because he mowed the grass and because he plowed the snow for 20 years, by the law of adverse possession, there was a great argument to be made that because I bought this land from him, I own this piece of property because of adverse possession. The second potential answer we gave to the town was they moved a highway 20 years ago to make a 2-lane highway going through this area, and the Department of Transportation moved it. So that's another legal term called an abandoned right-of-way. And so we told the town, you know, it could be ours, it could be the Department of Transportation's, because they took over this land to build a highway 20 years ago. Or, thirdly, it could be yours because Chippewa Street used to be underneath all this stuff 30 years ago. So we gave them 3 options. It's either ours, the Department of Transportation's, or yours. But you know what? It's worthless other than to me. So let's figure out a way that I can rent it or lease it or do something. They came back a few days later and they said, we've decided it's ours. And we also have decided that you have to put in 7 parking spaces into this property you just bought, but you cannot put it into this useless piece of land that we just discovered that we could take from you. And so that requirement of 7 parking spaces made it impossible for me to build a beer garden that I had intended to build when I first bought the property. That was the original sin of the town, after the original sin of selective enforcement by the county coming after me. So fast forward to the next situation. So now that they told me I had to put in 7 parking spaces, I couldn't do anything. That happened in March of 2022. In order to not go bankrupt based on the property I had bought, I needed to make money off of that property. And what I did was I accepted what I thought was a completely unfair situation. I accepted it just so I could get open that following summer tourism season. We started building. We needed to get that administrative review permit in order to even get a building permit. And it was the building, which is now beautiful. It's on the National Register of Historic Places. I've made it a great replica of the original 1935 Texaco gas station. But you know what? Before I got that administrative review permit, there was mold growing in there. There was water, every water damage. It was filth. And I had to get it ready to go before the summer tourism season, so I accepted their horrible offer. So I wasn't quite done because in the summertime, everything was ready to go, but everything wasn't perfect on the outside. So me, not knowing anything about municipal government, went to the town and said, guys, everything's basically ready. It's safe to visit. It's safe to shop at. But, I haven't paved my street, or I haven't made it all beautiful on the outside. They're like, you can't open. Well, guess what? The town of Minocqua is unincorporated, and they don't have the jurisdiction to say that you can't open. The county zoning committee is the only one. But I didn't know that at the time, so I was like, Jesus, what do I do now? So I went to Vic Ouimet, who lived right down the street, who had a building, and I rented 317 Front Street, which was an old accounting firm, and that to be my tap room. I went to the state, Wisconsin Department of Revenue, and changed my address with the state, saying that now 317 Front Street was now the retail operations of the Minocqua Brewing Company. And I got permission from the state. Guess what? As soon as I opened up that place on 317 Front Street, I got a letter from Carl Jenrick at the Oneida County Zoning Committee saying that I didn't have an AR administrative review permit, nor did I have a retail license to operate out of that location, 317 Front Street. Well, I called my lawyer. I'm like, what happened? I thought we were good. He's like, well, I just looked at the records. Over the last 30 years, 15 other businesses had sold stuff out of 317 Front Street, and none of them had an administrative review permit or had a retail license or permit to sell any wares out of there. The first time in 30 years that somehow I get selectively enforced and try to be shut down. There was a $750 citation I got, which was revoked as soon as we reminded them that they had never done that before to that particular place. That was a second selective enforcement they did. So I knew I was never going to get a fair shake from the county. That summer, I put up little tents on the side of the building, and I put up little. I got to get this, or else I'm going to go brain dead. So I put up little tents. I started serving beer outside. They started citing me over and over and over again that summer. I knew this was going to be a problem, but the summer was over. And so I attempted to amend my administrative review permit so that I could sell beer outside. And I did that in September of 2022. The county said you have to go through the town once again. The town only meets once a month all winter long because it's tiny. And in September, I went to the town to try to amend and get their blessing, even though they have no jurisdiction over the matter. I tried to get their blessing. They waited until March to hand 6 months, knowing that I was going to be in a pickle because I have to open my place and make money for 4 months out of the year in the summer tourism season. They waited until March to say, we conclude that we will still demand you put in 7 parking spaces, and you can't use. This was the plan that we had. This was the plan. I was like, guys, you took this from me, or you just decided you owned it, but it's worthless to anybody. How about we put the parking right here if you demand parking so much? By the way, right across the street is a public parking lot with 45 spaces that nobody uses. Even on July 4th, I documented in a video that nobody even parked in that public lot, which is less than a minute walk away. But they're demanding that I have the 7 spaces, but they're not letting me put it in this pork chop. They're forcing me to put it right here where this beer garden should go. They said no, and I'm like, well, guess what? You don't have the jurisdiction to say no. I'm going to wait for the county to render their decision because you guys have proven that you're going to break the law because you don't have the jurisdiction to tell me this stuff. So I go to the next county board meeting in May, a month later, a month before the summer tourism season starts, and the same zoning committee that we're meeting in front of today said I had to put in these. They said, oh, we'll give you no, we'll give you one. We'll give you one exemption, and now you only have to put in 6. Well, guess what happened when somebody on the Oneida County Zoning Committee, and I bet you it's Carla Blankenship, because she whispered to me while crying one day when I was submitting an application to a conditional use permit, what they're doing to you is wrong. She works for the zoning committee for Oneida County. She whispered while crying, saying, what they're doing to you is wrong. Well, I got a feeling that Carla Blankenship came up with this graph right here. What this graph will show you is that in the last 3 years, after 2 tries, we've only gotten 1 parking spot waived and have been forced to install 6, when 207 spots have been waived to 12 other businesses in Minocqua and Woodruff. Everybody gets a parking exemption in Oneida County if they need one to expand their business. Let me give you a few examples. Rocky Reef Brewing, less than a mile away from me, exactly the same business that I am. Rocky Reef Brewing applies for 33 parking exemptions to guess what they wanted to do? Build a beer garden. The same thing that I wanted to do. They applied for 30. They were forced to put in 30. They didn't want to put in. They put 0 in, and they were granted 33 parking exemptions to build their beer garden. The yacht club, a bar less than a mile away from me, it has a rooftop deck. Minocqua Yacht Club, right here. They put a rooftop deck in, which expanded their square footage. They needed to put in 47 parking spaces by law, by county code, in order to expand their square footage. They were given 30 parking exemptions. All these businesses in Minocqua got 170 parking exemptions. I got 1, and I didn't get 6. This is a pure example of selective enforcement and targeting my company. There is no better evidence for a federal lawsuit than this. The problem is, filing a federal lawsuit involves tens of thousands of dollars, and we didn't get a court date until 2025, which means justice delayed is justice denied. I didn't have the money to fight them in federal court. So that is where we stood last year. When they denied that, when they showed me that, I knew that we were in for a huge fight. And I said, screw it. I have to make my business run. And so we started serving beer in my front stoop, which is a concrete stoop. My federal brewer's license and my state brewer's license allows me to serve beer on premise. My front concrete stoop is on premise. But you know what? My administrative review permit says from 2 years ago that from the county, I can't have outdoor sales. So the county started shut me down last year in part because they said I was selling my beer outdoors. Well, I was selling my beer inside, and people were coming out to my stoop, which was on premise, to drink it outside. I know it's a cat and mouse game, but it's ridiculous that they were even thinking about that. They shouldn't have even. And by the way, if you look directly across the street from me, there's a place called the Bottled Bean, who have no fence around their front yard, and they're serving beer and wine and alcohol and mixed drinks exactly in front of me. That has no restrictions whatsoever, against that. So we fought tooth and nail last year. They shut me down for not only that, for having an unenclosed dumpster last year was the other reason they said they were going to shut me down. Somebody did a Google search within 20 minutes of hearing that, and they found probably 50 instances of unenclosed dumpsters in the entire Oneida County. Not only did they 50, but they found one across the street at the Lakeland Times, which is my arch enemy. They had an unenclosed dumpster. Oak Fire Pizza, my old building, had an unenclosed dumpster. There wasn't even an unenclosed dumpster at this very courthouse where the zoning committee met to shut me down. They were in violation of their own zoning ordinance. So they shut me down on these bogus zoning violations. I immediately sued Oneida County in federal court, like I had sued the town of Minocqua in federal court. Their corporate counsel, which is the same guy that's going to fight me today, I'm sure told them they would lose in federal court because what they're doing is so obvious. It's so obviously illegal because of that graph I showed you earlier. So they actually blinked, and we actually came up with a compromise to be able to allow me to build my beer garden, but also put in these crazy 5 or 6 spots that they wanted. It's like making sausage. If you look at our parking lot right now, it's the most ridiculous parking lot you've ever seen in your life. You have to actually enter from the highway and parallel park and cross the other cars that are there, then back in. It just makes no sense. But they were so stubborn, even though they had given away 200 parking exemptions to everybody else that wanted them, they were so stubborn, they had to make sure that the town of Minocqua, who said I had to have 6, got their 6. So we made it. We made a compromise. I was cool with that. But then now we're back to the start, because that compromise included forcing me to get an easement from the town in order for cars to come over the highway into this disputed area, which they didn't even know they had 4 years ago, but asserted their ownership of it once we told them it could be theirs. We needed to get an easement from them, And that brings us to back to the start of this story. They would not give us the easement until we dropped our lawsuit against them, which is extortion. Cities and townships cannot force you to do things if you do things as a quid pro quo. It's just illegal. Cities have to treat everybody fairly. Getting an easement to get to your property is about as rubber stampy as it gets. They withheld that easement until I was forced to drop my lawsuit against them because I ran out of money. And 2 weeks after that, the county comes at me and tells me that they're going to haul me back into court and haul me back into this committee meeting to shut me down once again before the summer's even officially started, before all the tourists come in July. So the moral of the story here is that they don't want me to tell this long story. And so this meeting that's happening here, they're going to say, stick to the topic at hand. You have violated these 4 things on your conditional use permit. And because of that, we're going to drop a nuclear bomb on your company and force you to shut down. But the reason those 4 things, and by the way, those 4 things are completed, just not the way they want to see them completed. They want pavers in my beer garden instead of the rocks we put in. Well, guess what our conditional use permit says? It says we have to adhere to the wastewater management plan that our engineer did to make sure that the wastewater seeps into the ground properly. Well, guess what's more pervious than a paver? Rocks. So we're doing something safer than the plan. They also said I needed to pave my street. There's nothing in the conditional use permit other than potentially a gray part here that says I should pave it. We didn't say we had to pave our street. It's perfectly usable and it's not paved. You know why? Because I don't have enough money, because I keep on having to fight these assholes in court all the time. So they're saying they're going to shut me down because I don't have asphalt. We don't have to have asphalt per our conditional use permit. So they're moving the goalposts. They're creating stipulations that I've never agreed to, and they're moving the goalposts, and they're forcing me out of business as a result, which is completely illegal. And that's why we're going to have to yet again fight. And I'm going to have to spend all the profits I make this summer hiring more lawyers to fight in federal court to keep on battling these guys. When all that we need to do, you should come and see my customers. They're some of the smartest people throughout the country. We had somebody from Philly today. We had people from New Zealand. There are so many people that have never visited Minocqua before, but have heard of our progressive activism in the entire state of Wisconsin, which is such an important place to be in America because it's a swing state for our entire country, to avoid getting Donald Trump elected and becoming a dictatorship. We have been very active in politics around the state, and we are a threat to the Republican Party. And people visit us because they want to actually see what the hell's going on up in Minocqua. And they drink beer, and they're smart, and they're wonderful people. They want to shut all that down because we actually are making a difference in northern Wisconsin, and we're actually making a difference in all of Wisconsin. And this is their way to bankrupt me, so I cannot have a voice anymore and try to change and try to keep Wisconsin blue. So thank you all for coming. We're going to go in there, and within 2 minutes of me trying to say what I just told you for the last 45 minutes, they're going to physically remove me from this meeting.
Have your cameras ready.
And I would love it if Channel 12 got a picture of that.
You're going in right now.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I hope it worked. Sit down.
All right.